This is where newly purchased games from the digital store now have this validity timer that indicates the license will need to be renewed every 30 days, and that this would be an effective way for PlayStation to patch things like the unlimited game sharing method, and also using digital games with vulnerabilities to help jailbreak the console, since you need to keep the console offline until a jailbreak is released. But if the game license needs to be renewed after 30 days, then it would not be able to be used to load a jailbreak. Now, of course, I was mainly coming at this from a jailbreaking standpoint, but of course, a lot of people were reposting the video and it kind of blew up online, mainly for the game preservation part of this issue, which of course is the fact that you don't really own your games if it has to check in every 30 days in order to validate the license. And, if you keep your console offline, then after 30 days, your games will no longer be able to be played. And this seemed to only be happening to new games that you purchase on the store, whereas older games that you purchase do not seem to have this 30-day restriction. Now, I mainly wanted to make this video to give you guys a few updates on this, as well as also to kind of try and defend myself a little bit, because there was a lot of people out there claiming that this was all BS, and because I was the one that made sort of the original video that kind of took off, then a lot of people are directing that at me as though I'm spreading misinformation. So I want to just go ahead and let you guys know what the updates are here and try and, respond to a lot of the criticism. So first of all, some people were misunderstanding this as if we were trying to say that the game would expire after 30 days and you'd have to buy it again. Nobody is saying that. We're only saying that you would have to check in with PSN, connect to the servers to renew the license so that you could keep using it for another 30 days. And it just has to be, connected online every 30 days at least once in order to keep the license going. But obviously, if you keep your console offline for over 30 days and you don't have an internet connection, then you would lose access to the game. Or if the servers went down at some point in the future, when PlayStation decide to shut down the servers for the PS4 in the future, then you would effectively lose access to those games after 30 days once the servers were shut down, if this 30-day restriction was still imposed. So that is kind of the main issue there. Now, the other thing I've seen people saying that this is just a bug with the way the license is displayed, and it won't actually lock you out after 30 days. So this is just, it's like a visual glitch with the license. It's not supposed to show 30 days. And, after 30 days, it will just like auto renew. It won't actually require you to be connected to PSN to renew the license. It is just a bug. It's not intentional. Now, maybe that is true, that it's not intentional, but this is definitely a real issue, because I have tested this myself by removing the CMOS battery, because when you remove the CMOS battery, instead of having to wait the 30 days to see if it actually expires, you can remove the CMOS battery, which will desync the clock, the system clock, and then the console, when it doesn't have a synced clock, it cannot rely on the internal kernel clock for when the game expires, so it will just prevent you and lock you out from launching any games that are subscription based or rentals that expire after a certain amount of time. So I did this. I removed the CMOS battery from my PS4, rebooted the console with the Ethernet cable unplugged so it's not connected to the network, and you can see that when I log back in here and I check my date and time, that it's reset back to 1970, which is what happens when the CMOS battery dies. It gets reset. So you can see that my games are not accessible. Now, again, the games that I purchased before this change was implemented, they are still loadable. So Uncharted, Nathan Drake Collection, and Black Ops 3, those are still runnable, but those were the ones that did not have the issue. But any recent purchases like Hollow Knight, Star Wars Racer Revenge, and of course Don't Starve Together Console Edition, they are not loadable. As you can see, when I try to run them, you've got the padlock symbol, and when I load them, it basically tells me that I need to adjust my date and time in the settings. So yeah, and even if you adjust date and time, it will not change. You have to actually resync it with PSN. You need to resync your clock with PSN. So that shows that these timers are legitimate. This is not some kind of visual bug where the license is fine, but it's just showing some weird timer for some reason that doesn't actually affect it. No, it is actually affecting it, as you can see, because when I remove the CMOS battery and the clock gets reset, the games are not playable. So that shows that this is actually a real issue. Now, whether this is actually intentional or not is still up for debate, although it seems it may be unintentional. So Does It Play has been doing some investigation on this and have said here that they received word from an anonymous insider. The Sony DRM issue is unintentional. From what we gathered, Sony accidentally broke something while fixing an exploit. They've known about the confusing UI for a while, but didn't see it as urgent, hoping for a clarifying statement now. Now, we've already confirmed that this is not just a visual bug, as resetting the CMOS battery does in fact lock you out of the games, and I have additional confirmation from somebody else who tried the same thing here. So Destruction Games says, I've also been experimenting with this. I can confirm that if your CMOS battery dies, any digital game with the timer becomes unplayable again, even if the console is set to as the primary console for the account, which mine also is. And this is a digital game I purchased with money yesterday. I didn't claim it with PS Plus, so this was a full purchase, and he has been locked out in the same way I have when I reset my system clock. So hopefully that convinces people that this is actually real and I'm not just talking out of my ass here. I'm also a little bit suspicious at the claim that this is not intentional in any way, because for something that's unintentional, it does seem to achieve a lot of PlayStation's goals in terms of, you know, preventing certain exploits, given the fact that having to renew every 30 days means that you, again, cannot just go offline with vulnerable games that could be used to jailbreak and be able to use them indefinitely offline. They'll stop working after 30 days. That would be a good security measure that PlayStation would implement there. And not only that, but the unlimited game sharing method as well. This would also theoretically patch that. So it would make sense for Sony to do this from a security standpoint, but obviously not from a game preservation standpoint. Another couple of things, people say just restore the licenses and then that fixes all of the problems, where you can go into settings and you can go to account management. But yeah, restoring the licenses doesn't work if you're offline, because you need to be connected to PSN. And if you're on an older firmware waiting for a jailbreak, for instance, you can't restore the licenses either, because as you can see, they're just blanked out here. No option to restore the licenses. You need to be connected to PSN on the latest firmware to restore the licenses. So if you were stuck offline, this would not solve the problem. And people are saying if you do restore the licenses when you're online, it fixes the timer and the timer no longer appears. But when I tried to do this, it did not fix the problem. So when I connected back to PlayStation Network on the latest firmware and then went to restore the licenses, you can see it does reset the timer back to 30 days again, but the timer is still there. It does not remove it entirely. So it does not actually solve the problem. So that's the issue that we have at the moment. And then last but not least, people were calling me out for saying it affects the PS5 when people don't seem to see this timer for PS5 games in the information like it is on PS4. Now, I will admit that with PS5, I'm less sure about the PS5 because I don't have a PS5 on the latest firmware to actually verify this in the same way I can with the PS4. And I was basically going on a couple of reports from people who had the Star Wars Racer Revenge game on the PS5 just before the 13.0 system update came out for the PS5, and they had the digital version of the game and they were keeping their consoles offline in order to be able to use it to jailbreak in the future. They weren't going to connect to PSN and update the firmware, and now after about a month they no longer seem to be able to run their Star Wars Racer Revenge game. It's saying they have to connect to PSN to verify the license. So it does indicate it may also affect the PS5 as well, which is of course why I mentioned it in the video, but I'm less sure about the PS5 because I don't have one to actually test on myself. Oh, and one more thing, of course, is that some people have been reporting and showing screenshots that they do not have the timer on some of their recent purchases on the PS4. But of course, it could be being rolled out in specific regions first. I have noticed that there's been quite a few screenshots showing the timer from people in Europe, and me being in the UK also having the issue. But outside of that, there might be certain regions that don't have this change implemented, at least not yet. Or of course, if it is truly unintentional, then perhaps it's only affecting certain accounts. But anyway, hopefully that clears things up. I'm not trying to put out any misinformation or mislead people in any way. Hopefully this is an unintentional bug, as some reports would indicate it might be, and PlayStation will update it and fix this, and this will no longer be a problem. But it is a problem right now. As you can see, I've got verified proof of removing the CMOS battery and not being able to run the games, which clearly shows that this 30-day license thing is real, because if it did not have any kind of time-based requirement, it should still allow me to run them with the CMOS battery removed the same way it can with my older PSN purchased games that did not have this timer implemented. So yeah, anyway, that's all I really have here for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one or found the information useful. If you did,